And let's cross live now to Professor at Al Ma'arif University, Marwa Osman. Welcome to the program, madam. For the first time, Iraqi Hezbollah struck a U.S. military base with a kamikaze FPV drone in what was a surprise attack. What did you make up of this?
Thank you for having me on your program. Well, what I think is that the Islamic Republic is now no longer alone in this war. It wasn't alone to begin with when Hezbollah began its retaliatory attacks against Zionist Israel, but now with the Iraqi resistance as well, which they issued prior to the attack, I think a week prior to the attack, it issued a statement in support of the Islamic Republic of Iran and the axis of resistance, now have shown that they are capable, fully capable of committing to their part of the resistance, especially after they lost their own as well fighters who were bombed by the American Air Force over the past week. Scores were killed by that attack, which was not on the battlefield, so it was an illegal attack by the Americans. So now when we look at this footage in one of the most important and one of the vast military bases in the region, which is the Victoria base in the or near the airport of Baghdad, we see that not only they were able to strike their target, they took their time. They actually were flying the drone for a long period of time undetected, and then decided to find the place that had hosted the most amount, because look, there are cars, if you see now as we watch, there were cars parked near a certain building, which made the drone circle that area a couple of times before choosing its target precisely. This tells two things in specific. One, that the Iraqi resistance is not sitting on the sidelines when it comes to the endgame war that's happening at the moment against the entire peoples of this part of the world, West Asia. And two, is that they are fully capable of inflicting real damage against the American occupation, and most probably in the upcoming days also against the Israeli entity occupation, because we've seen over the past 3 years during the genocide against Gaza that the Islamic resistance in Iraq was also able to send in both ballistic missiles and drones into Zionist Israel. So this just keeps escalating.
And how is such an incident likely to go down in the U.S.? Is the White House prepared for its citizens to see American soldiers fleeing from drones?
I think, my friend, that the American administration, the Trump administration, had no idea what it was getting itself into when it pressed that button of war for the sake of Zionist Israel. I think that Trump now is starting to get to feel what it means to get swamped by a war that had absolutely nothing to do with his administration. Iran never attempted to be a threat to the United States of America. On the contrary, they were sitting together, negotiating. They were on the negotiating table for the second time when the Americans decided that they want to attack the Islamic Republic of Iran, starting with killing the highest senior member of the Islamic Revolution, Imam Sayyid Ali Khamenei. And after that, Trump was thinking that it would be just a walk in the park, the same thing that happened in Venezuela. But he was very much mistaken, despite the fact that his Joint Chief of Staff had issued a written letter to him 1 week prior to that war. And it's written for a reason, because that Joint Chief of Staff wants to take that responsibility off of his shoulders, because he knows that after the dust actually settles from this war, it could be in weeks, it could be in actual more than a year if it continues as is. When the dust settles, it will be his responsibility to bear. So he put it in a letter, in a written letter, to say, I told you not to go through it. And then Trump listened to Kushner and listened to other parts of his, or other people in his cabinet, like the War Minister Pete Hegseth, and like Marco Rubio, also the Secretary of State. So Donald Trump, after that, we started listening to what he has to say, and every statement was contradictory to the statement that he initiated just in the morning. At night, he would change it. At first, he would say Iran is no longer capable of fighting us. They have lost. In the afternoon, they say we're going to give them hell. At night, he would say, it wasn't my idea. I listened to Kushner and others. So he's a bit, it is a very complicated situation. He is very confused as to where this will lead. And at the same time, his administration and the people who supported his decision to go to war are putting the blame on the Arab states in the Persian Gulf Arab monarchies, saying that you are not willing to fight. No one told them that they need to fight. You are actually opening bases in their countries supposedly to protect them, not the other way around. So now it's a very complicated situation, and not only the bases and the interests of the United States are being targeted, Strait of Hormuz is being completely shut down to all kinds of exports and imports toward the Arabian Peninsula, including that companies from the United States of America. And we might just see Bab al-Mandeb as well, if and when actually they decided to go into the war, the Ansarullah. But when they decide, and if they close off the Bab al-Mandeb, the first people who will start moaning are the Europeans, hence why now they're removing the sanctions from Russia to try and get their hands on Russian oil and gas. But they will be moaning from the economic catastrophe. And next will be the regular American citizen that will be feeling the heat from the economic change and the heat from the bodies that will be flown back home.
Of course, Lebanon, where you are now, has also found itself once again in the IDF's firing line. Tell us what's the situation in Beirut like, and what's the current mood among the people there?
Let's start, it never ended. The ceasefire was always violated by Zionist Israel. When it was signed on November 27, 2024, Zionist Israel violated our land, air, and space 10,000 times when the resistance in Lebanon was abiding by that ceasefire. Over the course of 15 months of that supposed ceasefire, Israel killed more than 500 Lebanese civilians and damaged many towns, many shops, many businesses, and affected many family lives. Now, after the assassination of Imam Sayyid Ali Khamenei, and after 15 months of sitting aside, not retaliating, the Islamic resistance in Lebanon, Hezbollah, decided that it's the time to retaliate. And honestly, it was a surprise for us and for the Israeli entity. For us, because the media propaganda was saying that Hezbollah is no more, that the resistance has no capabilities. And for the Israeli entity, because it thought that Hezbollah is no longer existing in the southern part of the Litani. It was a pleasant surprise for us, a very dark surprise for the Israeli entity, because up until now, for the past 13 days, Zionist Israel was not able to advance in South Lebanon, which means at the very end of the border, Hezbollah is fighting man-to-man. Now, what is happening is Zionist Israel, as always, it resides to killing civilians. We have now more than 900 civilians in Lebanon killed, most of whom are children, more than part of whom are children. We have more than 100 child, more than 60 women killed. We have families completely obliterated, completely erased from their civil paper, from their civil registry. When we speak in Lebanon, especially in areas that are away from the capital, you have people who reside in the same building, same family, like the brother and the sister and the grandparents. They all reside in one building. And Israel is committing massacres against those people. Added to that, the capital, Beirut, is also under attack at some points without evacuation orders, and at other points with evacuation orders. So that puts a toll on the residents who fled, who are displaced from South Lebanon and from the suburbs of Beirut into the heart of the capital, Beirut, because now for a second time they have to be displaced and to endure the aggression of the Israeli entity. But the sentiment on the ground, you can take your cameras, RT is very welcome to go down to the streets and talk to the people, especially those who are displaced, and they can hear the resilience in the voices of the people. Trust me, I'm displaced myself. I've already lost my house in the south of Lebanon. Most probably I will lose my house in the Dahiya suburbs, in the suburbs of Beirut. I tell you, honest to God, the only thing that matters to me and to the people who are displaced is the safety of our men who are putting their lives on the line to defend us, for our right to reclaim our right in our land and in our freedom.
I'm sorry to hear about you losing your house, and frankly about the loss of so many lives there in Lebanon. But we do have a bureau there, and believe me, they're filming everything, and they're watching and everything with their own eyes, and of course telling all about that to the rest of the world. You've touched upon Israeli propaganda, and indeed, besides striking Lebanon, Israeli intelligence has also been playing its role, dropping leaflets designed to turn the local population against their government. Is this an effective tactic, do you think, given all that you've described now that's happening there?
You know, over the past 2 days, we've been witnessing a storm in Lebanon and heavy rain. So the people used those leaflets to light some fire to get some heat with it. That's what's happening. There was some warning issued to the people that do not scan the codes that are on that paper. Beginning, it's a paper sent, it's a leaflet dropped by an enemy. That's the primary reason for you not to scan the code. The second is they will attempt to contact you and to try to bribe you to stand against the resistance. Now, I know a majority of the people want a fall for this, but there are some people who are weak with their spirit and might fall for this. But it's very important to notify that the people took it as a joke. They are using it as a fuel for their fires, and that's the maximum that they could do. They could just say, and it was written, by the way, in the wrong Arabic language. It turned into a meme. We had some teachers on X try to correct verbally and grammatically the paper, and it was written in a bad way. So it was taken more of a joke by the Lebanese people.
And well, it's good that people still have some sense of humor there, given the dire situation that's going on. Despite both the Pentagon and IDF always claiming they only hit military targets, the facts show that residential areas with schools and kindergartens coming under fire. You've mentioned that as well. Do you think that's ever taken into account?
Look, up until yesterday, the number of paramedics, doctors and nurses that were killed by Zionist Israel in Lebanon over the past 13 days was 27. That's a very hard number. They've been also attempting to target ambulances. I think you've read the order, the threatening, the warning order that was issued by the Israeli occupation forces online. And it says that we warn that Hezbollah is using ambulances to move from point A to point B. They are giving pretext to start targeting ambulances in the streets of the capital and all across Lebanon. Mind you, this is projection, because during the infiltration attempt in Nabishit and the Biqa' last week, they themselves, the Israelis, used an ambulance to move from point A to point B to try and find the remains of Ron Arad, the Israeli entity pilot who was captured in Lebanon in 1986. And it was pictured, and we have video evidence of that ambulance. So it's all projection. But mind you, for the past 80 years, they've been doing this to Palestine. For the past 3 years, it's been a genocide in Palestine, and they have bombed every hospital, every school, school children, ambulances, paramedics, media personnel. They don't care, because the world is watching in real time, my friend, and is complicit to it because they keep silent. When you keep silent in such times, you are complicit to the crime. They don't care. Their own ideology allows them to do this. On the contrary, the ideology of our resistance doesn't allow it to target residential areas or civilians, despite the fact that we consider them colonial settlers. But our ideology says it's haram, it's banned to kill people who are not in the battlefield. But on the other side, Zionist Israel does a lot more than that. It commits war crimes, it commits genocide, and the international community seems to be living on a different planet.
All right, Professor at Al-Ma'arif University, Marwa Osman, thank you so much for finding the time and sharing your thoughts with us, and please stay safe.
Thank you.